Okay. So right now, I have the shopping cart display file within my main canvas area. I can dock the widgets panel so I can get a little bit more screen space to work with. And notice here that everything has been designed completely with the visual designer. I didn't need to write a single line of code related to the user interface. I didn't need to write any HTML, no CSS, no JavaScript. I basically let my imagination and creativity take me to actually design this application, and then I had to write the RPG code behind the scene that controls the behavior and the business logic of the shopping cart application. So let's go ahead and run this application within the iPad emulator that we were talking about and see how that works. So right now I am sitting at the main sign-on screen so I can sign on to my system and, within the iPad emulator. And we'll see some of the differences between the iPad emulator versus a normal browser. So let's go ahead and sign on and take a look at the screen. And right now, these are the Profound UI samples. These are all available on the web for you to access under the Profound UI website. If you create an account there, you can actually access all of these resources along with the source code and everything. So let's go ahead and launch the shopping cart application. Okay, so let's examine what we have here first. Again, I have a product listing, an item master. I have a view image link, so if I click on this image, I get the product image. I can select yet a different image, and that brings another product image. I have options to scroll down, and now notice here that the scroll bar is a little bigger than the actual scroll bar that you would see in a normal PC browser. And that's because Profound UI is actually aware of the context in which the application is running in, and immediately it attaches certain events and it attaches this wide scroll bar so that you can actually touch it with your finger on the iPad device. So I can easily now scroll through the records with this scroll bar. And this application, you may have seen it in our previous webinar, it also supports drag and drop without writing any user interface code again. So I can just drag records from the item master into the mini shopping cart. I can yet drag some more records. And I'll add a third one. And notice that I have a running total at the very bottom, calculating based on the unit price and the quantity. And I can check out if I need to. Okay. Now, one thing that we notice right here is that if we make a comparison between the iPad and the iPhone, for example, we notice that the iPad has a much bigger screen display or a much bigger screen size. So now, how can we actually redesign this application to run in a smaller screen display such as the iPhone? So assuming that we take this example and run it in the iPhone, it will still function properly. But the user experience is definitely going to suffer because now the user will have to scroll sideways and up and down to get to the particular option. So now let's go ahead and actually recreate this example from scratch so that it can fit within a much smaller screen display. So let's go back to the visual designer. And I am now going to create a new display file. But before we do that, let me just mention real quick that Philip touched up quite a bit on some of the considerations for mobile development. And if you recall, an interesting consideration was related to the fact that the input device in mobile is your finger, and it's no longer the mouse. So we definitely need to account for that in the development process. So taking a normal subfile grid widget as an example, let's go ahead and drag that onto the screen. One thing I noticed is that the row height is not big enough to account for my fingertip touch on the device itself. So what I can do is I can basically resize the row height so that it accounts for that. Or alternatively, I can design my own mobile widget that takes all of the mobile development standards or best practices into account. So how can we do that? Well, there are two different ways this can be accomplished. And in either way, you will have to tap into our JavaScript API. So the first way is basically you create your own widget completely from scratch. And that means that you create the images that make up your widget. You create the CSS files that controls the look and feel of your widget, and JavaScript that controls some of the behavior of the widget. And as you may have guessed, this is probably geared more toward an advanced web developer. Now, the easy solution here is, which is the second approach, is basically creating a widget that's based on one of the available widgets in the Profound UI interface, but maybe you want to alter some of the properties, or maybe you want to add some of your own properties, if you will. And this is, as you may have guessed, this is the approach that we're taking today in our example. So before we can actually design or create this widget from scratch, let's go ahead and examine the widget tree because this is going to be relevant to creating this new widget. So as you can see, I have this category down here for custom widgets. And by the way, these are all widgets that we've built and they ship with the product. You can actually take a look at the code and you can work off these widgets to create your own. So first, we do have a category name, and we want to create our own category. Let's call it mobile widgets. And then we have a widget name along with a widget icon. So this is a Google Maps widget. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we drag this. Now, when we drag it on the screen, notice that I have this shadow following my mouse as long as I didn't drop the widget onto the canvas. And this shadow is called a proxy. So we also need to give our new widget a proxy so you actually know what you're dragging and where it will be dropped into the main canvas area. So now let's go ahead and see how we can create this widget. Okay, so I'm just switching to a development environment where I can write some standard JavaScript code, and this JavaScript code is actually, it uses our JavaScript API to create the widget. So I'm going to say PUI for Profound UI toolbox.add, and now I am adding my widget. And like I mentioned before, I'm just typing this from scratch for demo purposes, but essentially what you want to do is open up one of the examples that are packaged with the installer and actually make your way from these examples. So I'm going to add the category mobile widgets. And then I am going to specify the widget that I need to inherit all of the properties from. In this case, it's just a normal subfile grid widget. And then I need to add the text of the widget in the tree itself, and this is going to be mobile grid. And then the icon of the widget in the tree, and I just need to specify the path to this icon. And then I need to specify the proxy information, such as the proxy height and the proxy width. And then I need to specify the proxy HTML, and in this case, it's going to be the actual image that I need to populate or that I need to drag around the screen. And in this case, I need to give it a source. property. And again, I'm just typing the path of the image in my IFS. And then the last thing that I need to specify is some default options or some default properties. And one of them is the row height, since we want to make that bigger. So let's make that 45 pixels high. And the header height will also make that a little bigger. And then we need to specify the number of columns that we populate by default, and that's going to be 1. And the last thing that we're going to do is add a column width. And this is going to be 324. Okay. Now this file right here needs to be saved in a special location. And this location is actually under the main installation folder, under the user data folder, the custom widgets folder in the Profound UI installation. So I'm just going to save that. And now let's go ahead and see how that changes the interface. So now I just, I'm going to have another category popping out in the widgets toolbox right here once I refresh my screen. Let's go ahead and see how that does it. And as you can see, I have this mobile widgets category that I have just created. And what I can do in this case is expand that category and start actually including my grid widget. And as you can see, I have the new proxy, and I can just include it onto the screen. So let's go ahead and start the actual design of our iPhone application.